Hi, Avish. How are you, my friend?
All good in you, sir. How you doing?
I'm fine. Just been following the stages of where we're going with lockdown, but I do see that sport has been starting to pick up, especially in Germany. But I've been kind of reflective in the sense that how Corona has been impacting world sport in general. So, how do you feel in general about it?
Yeah, I think sports. The COVID-19 pandemic has really hit sports quite hard. It's been quite disappointing because there's been so many big tournaments that have been postponed. Well, if you had to take it into account now, you'd probably say cancel for the year because there's no way that some tournaments are even going to be able to fit into the calendar. 'Cause the sporting calendar is like so compressed these days,
Mm,
um, especially when we're talking about cricket as well.
yes.
Just before the pandemic obviously started, and when it actually when a country like India was scheduled to go on lockdown, it was just before IPL season, and
Yeah.
I was thinking probably a lot of traveling. There was going to be a lot of traveling, one lot of traveling, and I think players have lost the big incentives that you get from the IPL every year. And also on a broadcast level as well, they've lost out big time.
Yeah.
Commercially, the IPL is such a big tournament, and I think commercially, it's been lost heavily due to the pandemic. But we can understand that the pandemic. To put into words, I'd say the pandemic has become bigger than sports. COVID-19 has become bigger than sports in that sense.
Yeah. Been really, really bad. But I have been reading that there are possibilities that the IPL could happen because I was reading with what the BCCI was saying. So let's pray and hope, eh? So it might happen towards maybe mid-year, toward the end. So if it does happen, that'll be exciting because I know that our players definitely rely on that because the money is really huge. I mean, other countries like Australia and England are okay, but our players really rely on IPL.
um, to be honest with you, the IPL, I mean, the IPL is attractive from all over the world, and
Yeah,
yeah, I can understand the English players. You don't get a lot of English players that are in the IPL because obviously it clashes with their county circuit and domestic in their country.
and the
So
crowds are good there also.
the crowds are quite good there as well. Yeah, and obviously the IPL it's always a sellout game, no matter who's playing, whether it's team at the top end or the team at the bottom end. It's always a crowd. So it's a very unique atmosphere that you get from the IPL that you don't in any other T20 competition in the world.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, I mean the crowd attendances are phenomenal, and just the whole vibe of the IPL. It's sort of like an extravaganza. I like to call it a cricketing extravaganza for close to 6 to 7 weeks, and it keeps you on the edge of your as a fan, and it also keeps players on their toes as well because we playing games like at some point you can play 3 games in a week, so you've got to be on top of your game as well. It's a high intensity competition, and the quality of cricket is quite high as well. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Now, if we now get into a sport like, let's say, tennis, I mean, I know that I don't know if you follow Djokovic, right? But what's nice about Djokovic is that he did a fund recently. He suggested a fund that will be able to compensate the lower players in the tennis because they don't earn as well as the top players. But it's amazing how COVID is killing sports in general because before Corona, I mean, at least people are able to make some living in tennis, but now it's difficult because. But then I know now in Serbia they are starting some tennis there.
Yeah, look, it's been totally it's been quite disastrous on players that, especially unseeded players that obviously rely on ATP tours and things,
Yeah,
those
especially
sort
the
of
Grand Slams.
funds.
Especially, yeah, the Grand Slams
Yeah,
all
okay.
over.
I mean, the Grand Slam is a different ball game on its own, but
Yeah.
especially these ATP tours and things that
Mm.
especially upcoming players that rely on these sort of revenues. Uh, it's been hit so badly by this pandemic. On the other hand, what Djokovic is doing is marvelous. I mean, rallying behind us, and yeah, I hope there's players that actually punch their weight there and assist in this, because it's a great cause that he's actually putting up here as a pro. You know, yeah. And then you're talking about Grand Slams. I mean, there's so many Grand Slams that's already been killed. I mean, if you look at Wimbledon, it's the first time it's cancelled since World War II.
Yeah.
And just look at that now. It's. I mean, for any tennis player wants to play at Wimbledon.
That's true.
And I think Wimbledon is probably the pinnacle of tennis viewing as well. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at viewership, I think Wimbledon and probably the U.S. Open brings in a lot of revenue in terms of viewerships. So
Yeah.
that's been hit really bad. And honestly speaking, I don't know a lot of tennis, but I do follow Wimbledon quite a lot, and it's quite a shame it's cancelled this year. It's just the whole tradition of women, and it's got that tradition about them, and
yeah. But then what I've been reading is that I know that if tennis does go ahead this year, I know with the US Open does take place, then obviously what's going to be more crazy will be the French Open will be after that, and I don't know how players are going to survive. Imagine 2 Grand Slams 1 week after the other, but I guess they're going to have to figure it out.
Look, if we were to have a tournament like, say, the US Open, I'm probably thinking it could be behind closed doors, because social interaction is not something that's it's not going to be something that's going to be working now. So I guess when we talk about sports, the fans play a big role. I mean, the spectators. It's just that whole vibe, and it raises a player's performance as well. It's quite amazing. You see a player's performance in a game where there's no spectators. If you're playing a game with absolutely no spectators in the stadium, behind closed doors, you don't see that same sort of vibe. And I don't know if players to give up their best when there's no fans around.
That's true. It's funny you said that, because I know I'm going to be digressing, but Virat Kohli had mentioned something like that about the atmosphere not being the same without crowds. But that's cricket now. But yeah, I can see where you come.
I guess with cricket, you can't talk about, in terms of cricket now, a lot of club games and a lot of provincial games, you generally see no crowds in the grounds a lot of times. Especially these first class games, you hardly see any crowds. But just imagine the IPL being played behind closed doors and no crowds at all. That's
it's better than nothing, my friend. It's better than nothing. Imagine because the IPL isn't only about the players, but it's about also the people behind the scenes, right? People need to eat,
I agree with you.
So better than nothing. Beggars can't be choosers. Yeah. That famous proverb,
Especially this time, 2020 is a year that's gonna change us forever. It's really forever. 2020. You're never gonna forget this. But I think the challenge with the IPL now, and I heard a small interview that Alan Border did about the IPL, choosing the IPL and the T20 World Cup now. I mean, that's going to be a difficult choice now, because in terms of the T20 World Cup, you got to understand that teams are going to be coming from all over the world to Australia for this tournament. So there's going to be travel, and with travel comes a risk as well, Whereas with IPL, you have the same scenario where
Yeah.
teams are going to travel. Players
Yeah.
are going to travel.
Yeah.
But the only thing now with the T20 World Cup and the IPL is you're going to get fans as well that are going to be coming in for this tournament, because it's a world tournament, showpiece. So
I don't
you're going to
think
get
that.
fans
I
from
think
all over
the
the
World
world,
Cup.
from
I think
India.
the World Cup will
Definitely.
be played behind closed doors. Also, it won't work to have fans for the World T20 World Cup. It'll just be closed doors.
Yeah, yeah. I guess that's what's probably going to happen. But if you're going to choose now, what do you choose? Do you choose between the IPL, which is obviously a lucrative tournament, it's a T20 tournament, but it's obviously private owners and so forth,
Yeah.
or do you choose a T20 World Cup, which is a world tournament? And players obviously relish those sort of tournaments, as do fans like us as well. There's something about a world
Honestly,
tournament that.
honestly, I'm looking at it in terms of the countries that will stand to benefit. Like if you look at the lower end country, they kind of benefit when the World Cup comes because of revenue that come from TV rights. So I think it's probably in terms of that way. I think it's better for the World Cup to happen because at least countries can
No,
benefit. So
most certainly.
yeah,
But as I
otherwise,
said, that's the challenge that's the challenge that the ICC is going to be faced with now. Whether
yeah.
to obviously go ahead with the World Cup, allow the IPL to take center stage. It's,
No, I
it's
think
it's it's going to be a tough one.
I
It's
think
going to be a tough one.
no, I don't think India will do that to ICC because I think ICC and India have an agreement with IPL. It used to be that way in the past, whereby IPL used to conflict, but
Yeah,
now I think they'll make a window for IPL if India can
yeah.
do it because it will happen. The World Cup will definitely happen. I don't say definitely, but it should
Definitely, yeah.
happen.
It's definitely something that they obviously got to make a priority.
And if it
Because
doesn't happen,
the World
hypothetically,
Cup,
the
the
World
World
Cup,
Cup being
yeah,
I mean, God
yeah,
forbid if the World Cup is postponed or cancelled for the
yeah.
year. I mean, it's going to be quite a financial disaster.
But it'll be a bigger financial disaster. India not touring Australia, but I know that'll happen because India is a money-minded country. So I see that happening more than if the World Cup doesn't happen. Make sense to you? Like I see India coming with a greater chance than the World Cup
That's
happening.
that's that's uh, that's actually a tour that we all actually anticipate. Again, we all should. The
Virat
last time,
Kohli and the Australians fighting, nothing better
yeah,
to watch.
I guess what you're saying, Steve Smith and Kohli fighting for the number one ranking. And the last time that India toured Australia,
Yeah,
Australia were obviously like understrength and so forth,
yeah,
because they had a lot of players that were like
yeah,
obviously banned for that ball tampering scandal.
yeah.
And I looked at the Australian side at that time, and they were very. I mean, the thing was quite average. The bowling was out of sorts. This time, I think India is in for a challenge.
Yeah, of
I,
course.
I do
Yeah.
think
But
India are in for a much sterner test this time
yeah,
around.
I mean they got the two
It's
best
gonna be a
batsmen, but
fascinating one, eh?
yeah, but then
Honestly,
now. Mhm.
I could call a winner at the moment, but just on home ground advantage and the way Australia do play at home, I just make them slight favorites. I just make them slight favorites, but India can prove me wrong as well. Yeah,
I don't know why, but I feel
I
that
just make them slight
Australia.
favorites.
I wouldn't. Well, the thing is, I have a feeling that Australia might just be favorites outright, and I tell you why. Because Australia's. I mean, now that they've got those two batsmen back, it'll become much more difficult to get out because Steve loves scoring runs. David Warner seems to like scoring runs against India. And it also depends on
Uh,
the pitches you prepare also. If you prepare sporting pitches, India has a chance. But now if you prepare pitches that are flat, then obviously Australia have the edge because they have good fast bowlers that get bounced. So I think it's gonna be
well,
it'll
well,
be it'll be
well.
difficult.
That's
But we'll see. I mean,
that's the
anyways.
challenge for the Indian batsmen as well. You know, to be
Yeah,
facing that barrage of fast bowling. But
yeah,
honestly, these days I feel that the captains and the administrators of home teams obviously have a lot of say in the way pitches are, prepared
yeah,
and so forth. Which I think that takes away the bit of sportiness that comes from these tours, because back in the day it was obviously different. It was all
yeah,
about the conditions and so forth. and how you utilize the condition. But nowadays, I feel there's so much focus on the pitch, you know, that the conditions obviously goes out of the window. It's your actual skills, you know, as a bowler as well. Yeah. So I feel that obviously Australia, the pitches are different there. They're much more harder. But the Indian players have actually improved. Have actually improved a lot touring Australia compared to in the past, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, but I feel
But as I say, Australia would be fired up for this one.
Yeah, but I feel we've kind of digressed a little here, man. We're supposed to be speaking about Corona, man, impacting the other sport, but
yeah,
got
of
into
course.
a bit of a cricket saga here, which was true.
I guess, I'll be talking about two big tournaments now. In terms of the cricketing fraternity, we're talking about the IPL and the T20 World Cup. Now, probably we're just hoping that both obviously have a chance of going forward, but we'd hate for one of them to be cancelled, eh? We'd hate for one of them to be cancelled or probably choose on either one of them. Because if you had to choose on either one of them, it's like an impossible choice at the end of the day. But I hope it doesn't come to that. So I just hope that the ICC and the BCCI obviously come to some sort of agreement in the next couple of months, and we can have the T20 World Cup, and then we can also fit in the IPL, which means a couple of tours and so forth might just be.
I'm sure it'll happen. Because
obviously have to take a backseat. Because I know there was a tour of.
Yeah, you see, if the ICC World Cup happens, it'll give India inspiration for their IPL to take place. But if the ICC World Cup doesn't happen, then it might have a bit of a knock-on effect for IPL. But anyway, we'll just have to wait and see, and then see. But then, what's your thoughts on the soccer now that German league is back?
Look, I watched a bit of the German league last week.
Nice.
As I'm saying, it was good that obviously there was some action back on the box and so forth. But you just don't get that vibe anymore with no fans in the arena and so forth behind closed doors. But it was a bold move from Germany to start the German league, and I'm pretty sure now that they probably can complete it, and you get a in that division. The problem is the other playing catch up at the moment. You've got your Spanish La Liga, you've got the Serie A, and you've also got the English Premier League, which is the biggest, in terms of broadcasting in the world. Broadcast rights. So it's going to be a challenge for all those states. I mean, all those nations to obviously decide when to obviously open the league, but obviously it's going to be behind closed doors. And I feel like the English league now, it's coming to a point where it's just a matter of a few games, and I hate to say this, but Liverpool will be champions of England.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, well, it's a matter of 6 points now that they require to obviously take the English league, and I'm not sure what's the thinking with Boris Johnson and the UK at the moment in terms of opening the Premier League. It would be nice to have some football in the English league again. But as I say, it's going to be a calculated risk that they got to take now in terms of opening, but also in terms of that safety measures that they have to keep in place as well. So it's a tough one. It's a tough one. Yeah.
I think what they're doing is they're trying to look for biosecure environments where players can easily. How do I explain this? I don't know if you've been reading about what measures they're putting in with the biosecure environments, etc., and all that.
I suppose. I guess even at football games now, where you've got other members of teams apart from the players, like your technical team and so forth.
Yeah,
they've got to obviously keep their social distance as well. Yeah. 1.5 meters apart from each other.
Yeah.
So the problem with the UK is they probably reaching the apex of the infection rate at the moment now. So it's climbing all the time, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of what
Respite.
can I say? Respite, yeah, no respite at the moment in terms of infections. So they've obviously got to wait for that to diminish and then open something like the Premier, because obviously obviously it's such a big thing for people in that country. But obviously health is first on the agenda now, you know.
Yeah, but at least I'm trying to think now. Tell me something on the last sport I was thinking about. Have you been able to check up what's been going on with rugby in general? Because ever since they won the Rugby World Cup, the Springboks, I just haven't been following much, except maybe on Instagram where people are just taking videos of each other. But that's
I'll tell you what, the closest I've come to rugby is watching all highlights at the moment for the past 2 months or so. It's been quite frustrating because we had our Southern Hemisphere competition, the Super Rugby, that was obviously postponed because of the COVID-19. And with regards to the Springboks, they were obviously going to play some test matches here in the country, in Durban as well, Joburg. They were obviously going to play Scotland. So that's obviously cancelled at the moment. The Tri-Nations, or do you call it the Rugby Championship, as we say these days, with Argentina, Australia, and All Blacks, that's also probably in danger of being postponed, cancelled as well. Rugby's got a very delicate time frame in the calendar year, whereas with other sports probably you can there is a bit of respite in terms of time periods and so forth. But with rugby, it's only a winter sport, early autumn sort of thing. I don't know how much of rugby that can be salvaged this year. In terms of tournaments, in terms of tours, it would be nice to get to have some international rugby on the boxes. That's like the pinnacle, of rugby, the international rugby. Not to say that obviously these provincial competitions are very important as well, because obviously those provincial competitions molds a player into becoming a fully fledged national team player. A Springbok player or an All Black or a Wallaby player.
Not to be funny, but when you're watching the soccer, were the players wearing masks by any chance?
They actually, it's good you brought that up. They actually weren't wearing masks, but in terms of celebrations and things, they weren't really celebrating with teammates as how they usually celebrate, some fists and hugs and sport. They were like maybe those shoulders, those shoulder
punches like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Salutes and so forth. Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah. It was quite laid back celebrations, eh? Quite laid back, yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna happen also. I guess, when the other sports, it's gonna be like that now. But then,
it'd probably be the same thing in cricket as well. No high fives and so forth,
Yeah, man. I mean, for our next topic in cricket, we should have a discussion on what your thoughts are as players either using saliva or wax, because that's a different topic. We could talk on that forever, and we don't want to get the
certainly.
people.
But it's just probably.
Yeah,
but I don't know if you've been following the golf recently.
Golf.
I know Tiger was just obviously an invitational with some other guys tomorrow, which is Phil Mickelson, and at Florida golf course. That's obviously going to be shown on CNN. Well, it's obviously a charity event, so I think it's the first time that you're going to have any sort of sporting action in the US. Well, we all know the US has been hit the hardest by the pandemic, so that's the first sort of action. In terms of Formula One, I think Formula One is going to be hit quite hard by this as well. It's going to be hit quite hard because if you look at Formula One, it's like a race every 3 weeks or so, always a Grand Prix. In general, sports is going to be hit quite hard. So there's going to be a lot of catching up. next year, which will be quite exciting as well, because if obviously we can foresee here, and there'll be a lot of tournaments that obviously will postpone but will be played next year. So fans can expect a lot of good sporting action next year. You know, in terms of with regards to football as well, the Euros was cancelled because of the pandemic. So they obviously wanting to play the Euros next year in 21. So that's something that football fans can look forward to. Then you've got the IPL that probably will go ahead next year. Fingers crossed, you know. It probably will go ahead next year. And and then you've got the football leagues and Super Rugby and outgoing, incoming tours. So there is quite a lot to look forward to. But yeah, I guess sporting fans have understood the situation that the world is in at the moment, and you know, it's difficult fighting the situation. But if we don't get any sporting action, it's going to be behind closed doors. But then it's better than no action at all.
Yeah, as people say, or the experts say, that we have to embrace the new normal. So, and if there's any silver lining with Corona, it's probably making people be a bit more hygienic than before, because what was happening is that you would take things for granted, like washing hands or just looking after ourselves much better. And now with the situation, obviously people are being tested now. So even when they go to practice, they'll be tested whether it's in cricket, rugby, tennis, etc. So even on the flights, I think now. So I guess it's probably a blessing in disguise, you know, if I could look at it like that. Are we trying to follow in?
I guess in terms of society, we've become more hygiene conscious now than we've ever been. I mean, in terms of society, we've become much more hygiene conscious. I think with sports in general, I know it's a lot about the players, but the one thing that draws a sports fan to put his telly on and watch a game is the atmosphere that is built by crowd attendances and all, because that plays a big part in sports as a whole. So it's going to take some getting used to watching sports behind closed doors. It is going to take some getting used to, but I think we can overcome it. But we're just hoping that it's not down for a very long time, because we all love that human interaction, you know.
On a final
we all love that
note,
human interaction.
on a final note, I had sent you a clip on WhatsApp regarding it was Mike Hazeman interview. I don't know if you watched it.
I think I'll probably go and have a look at it later.
Okay.
I quite like Hazy's.
Yeah. The reason why I'm asking you about it, because he had mentioned something about crowds, whereby if the capacity is, let's say, 100,000, he said that you could at least put, for example, 10,000 with social distancing. And it was quite an interesting view, because if all the members of the crowd are wearing masks and the social distancing, you should be okay, provided they're following those guidelines. So it's an interesting idea. I mean, his thoughts are there, you know.
That's actually quite interesting, what you're saying. I guess it all depends on the capacity of the stadium. Because if you've got a stadium capacity of, say, 30,000, you'd probably, I'd say you can have about, say, 5,000 fans in.
Yeah.
You probably have 5,000 fans in, and obviously practice at social. Yeah, you know, it can work, hey? It can work, because I've been to stadiums previously.
Okay.
I've been to stadiums previously, and I've watched a few cricket matches live, and especially in the local domestic competition, the Mzansi Super League. So I did go to one of the games, and I saw there was a lot of empty seats there, because I don't think the crowd attendance was so good on that day. But that could definitely work, you know. But I mean, those tickets are going to be priced now. If you say 10,000 tickets for sale, those tickets are already going to be priced. But I mean, it's better than no crowd. I mean, 10,000 people can make a lot of noise. So I prefer those 10 people in the stadium as opposed to no people at all, you know. So I think it's a brilliant idea.
But then also another thing I was thinking,
as long as they follow the guidelines.
Yes, But then, like in India, people in India and Indians, and I know I shouldn't say this because we are Indians, but Indians in general, we follow our own guidelines.
I guess the passion for especially cricket in that country is immense, and I mean for to have 10,000 tickets up for grabs in a stadium capacity of 60,000, I think there's going to be a lot of fights. It's going to be going on for those tickets. Those are really going to be like price tickets, but
And
I guess it's
especially,
up to the authorities now to obviously have some sort of control over that. It's a pity. It's
yeah,
a pity because I hope those tickets are obviously affordable, and I hope obviously authorities and administrators don't try and use this as a way to make profit and obviously inflate the prices of those tickets, because I think that would be a wrong thing to do.
I think what they should do is probably test the demand, make it normal price, and then if it's getting a bit too much of a demand, then they'll have to inflate prices, unfortunately. And I'll tell you why, because the last thing you want is the website crashing because the prices are the same and there's too much demand. So you got to make the prices such where it doesn't put someone off, but you got to try and make it such that it meets somewhere. I don't know how to explain it, but it's all economics at the end of the day.
Yeah, I guess it's an economic debate because a lot of these unions, they rely on this revenue. They rely on this revenue of crowd attendance and all for the maintenance, overall maintenance
Yeah,
and paying of their employees and so forth. So
yeah.
yeah, it's a delicate balance. It's a delicate balance.
And
I can only imagine what the cricket administrators are going through at the moment with.
yeah, like I don't know if you've been following the airlines. Like, Safeway, they've put some very good guidelines for the airlines in terms of not just guidelines, but good measures, how they'll sanitize, not just sanitize, but give certain items. And I think there's also will be social distancing in terms of seats on the flights. So that'll be quite good also for the cricketers when they're traveling. So I think it's kind of in a way mostly there. So fingers crossed, and yeah, good time to head out.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost you for a minute there. Sorry, I just lost you for a minute. Yeah, no, I do agree with what you're saying, but yeah, I mean, there's so much expenses that goes into sports, so you've got to find a way of making a profit, and you've also got to find a way of uh, curbing the viruses. So yeah, it's difficult that something that's of the nature of sports that's become an everyday life, and it's become such a huge industry has taken such a knock because of COVID-19.
But then also, I think in order for the sports to be able to go through, the flights will have to start operating. And now with social distancing on flights, I'm sure it'll still work, but it'll be fun to see how they put the players on those planes because, yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that'd be quite interesting. Probably there would be some social distancing there as well.
Uh,
Yes, it's
yeah,
it's it's a difficult one, hey? It's a really difficult one. Yeah.
and I
Uh,
think,
all we can hope is that we do get some sort of action, uh, and we do manage to salvage as much as we can in terms of sports going forward this year. Because I mean, the first quarter has been quite tough. It's been
yes,
difficult. It's been disastrous in terms of sports. So we
yep.
just hope that we can salvage in every sporting code as such, be it tennis, be it Formula One, be it football, be it cricket, be it rugby, be it baseball, be it NFL, any sort of sporting code. If we can salvage something, it would be something quite amazing. Yeah.
I think we all just got to be positive and hope for the best. And I think on that note, I think we'll just call it a day on this topic. I think we've said a lot, and I think for our next topic for the viewers, we can discuss about the measures being used for cricket in terms of which measures of how to make the game more competitive in cricket. I know people are considering wax on the ball, or if they can't use saliva and all that jazz. So we can probably use that for our next discussion.
Oh, that'll be definitely interesting. Yeah, definitely look forward to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Take care,
Thanks.
Sid.
Thanks
See
so
you
much,
soon.
man. Thank you.